The Titanic had a doppelganger in fiction. Okay, so imagine you're an author in 1898, sipping tea, scribbling out a novel about a luxurious, unsinkable ocean liner that hits an iceberg in the North Atlantic. You name it Titan. A few years later, an actual ship called the Titanic sets sail, claims to be unsinkable, and, you guessed it, slams right into an iceberg. Not only that, but the fictional Titan and the real Titanic shared eerily specific similarities. Both were about the same size, carried roughly the same number of passengers, had way too few lifeboats, and both sank in April. Now, your brain is probably screaming, did this author time travel, or was he just really bad luck for shipping companies? Actually, the explanation is more boring. It was educated guesswork mixed with the human brain's love for filling in patterns after the fact. People at the time were already obsessed with building bigger, faster, unsinkable ships. So yeah, some of this was bound to come true. But still, tell me you wouldn't side-eye that book if you read it in 1912. The author should have invested in lifeboat stocks. Lincoln and Kennedy, the creepiest presidential bingo card. All right. Here's the one everyone trots out at parties when they want to sound spooky. Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy had lives that mirrored each other, like they were reading from the same script. Elected to Congress 100 years apart, elected president 100 years apart, both shot in the head on a Friday. Both succeeded by guys named Johnson, and even their assassins, John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald, have 15 letters in their names. Coincidence? Or the universe trolling America? Here's what's happening. Your brain is addicted to patterns, especially symmetrical ones. We notice the 100-year gaps and letter counts, but we don't care about all the differences that ruin the neatness. Like, Lincoln was shot in a theater and Oswald in a warehouse. No. Wait, scratch that. The rhyme is flipped. See, it only sounds impressive if you cherry-pick details. But still, the list is long enough that it feels like a cosmic prank. Imagine being President Johnson in 1963, looking at Lincoln's history book and thinking, welp, I'm doomed. Maybe America should stop electing presidents with 7-letter last names. Napoleon and Hitler. The 129-year cycle of doom. 2 men, 2 centuries, one shared destiny of European chaos. Napoleon rose to power in 1804. Hitler in 1933. Yep, 129 years apart. Both invaded Russia. Both got wrecked by Russian winters. Both lost power, and both ended up as textbook cautionary tales. Oh, and their defeats came almost exactly 129 years apart too. Now, don't panic, but historians love pointing out this pattern, like it's some sinister doomsday timer. The reality? It's a cocktail of selective memory and coincidence. Human history has enough wars, dictators, and frozen armies that you can almost always line up dates and go, ah, yes, the universe is repeating itself. But the Hitler-Napoleon parallels are so striking, they feel like deja vu across centuries. Of course, the 129-year cycle fizzled out after Hitler, unless you're holding your breath for 2062, in which case, maybe start stocking up on thermal socks for the Russian winter. Apparently, history doesn't repeat. It just hits copy-paste with a snow filter. The curse of the Hoover Dam building. The Hoover Dam in the 1930s was no small feat. It was concrete, sweat, and about a decade's worth of questionable safety practices. Officially, around 100 workers died during construction. But here's the coincidence that gives people chills. The first recorded death on the project was a man named J.G. Tierney, who drowned while surveying the site in 1922. The last recorded death? Patrick Tierney, his son, exactly 13 years later, on the same date. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's less coincidence and more like a tragic Greek play. But statistically, this is where probability does its cruel math tricks. When you have thousands of workers spanning years of dangerous conditions, odd repetitions are almost inevitable. Still, the fact that it bookended with a father and son combo makes your skin crawl a little. Forget workers' comp. This family needed a cosmic HR department. Mark Twain's comet prediction. Samuel Clemens, better known as Mark Twain, had a sharp tongue, a love for cigars, and apparently an uncanny cosmic sense of timing. He was born in 1835, the same year Halley's Comet blazed through Earth's skies. Later in life, Twain predicted he'd die when it returned. His words, "I came in with Halley's Comet, and I expect to go out with it." Guess what? He died in 1910, literally one day after the comet's closest approach. Now, the logical side of your brain says, okay, Halley's Comet shows up about every 76 years, so yeah, it was bound to overlap with his lifetime. But the poetic side of your brain goes, excuse me, what? He basically scheduled his exit like he was syncing his Google Calendar with outer space. Forget authorship. His real side hustle should have been fortune-telling. The unlucky Franz Ferdinand license plate. We all know World War I was triggered by the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo in 1914. But here's a trivia fact that feels like a screenwriter's idea of too on the nose. The license plate on the car he was riding in read A3118. Read it another way. Armistice, November 11th, 18. That's the exact date the war officially ended, 4 years later. Coincidence? Absolutely. But it's the kind of eerie detail that makes you squint at history, like it's pulling a cheap magic trick. Nobody at the time noticed. Why would they? But in hindsight, it looks like history left us a cryptic spoiler alert stamped in metal. Imagine dying for a cause, only for your license plate to win. Most ironic foreshadowing in history. The Tale of Two Men named Mr. Bryce. In 1788, a man named Robert Bryce was hanged in England for stealing a horse. His executioner? William Calcraft. Fast forward exactly 100 years later, in 1888, another man named Robert Bryce, no relation, was hanged. And guess who pulled the lever? The same executioner's grandson, also named William Calcraft. Now, the rational explanation is that Bryce and Calcraft weren't rare surnames in Britain, and hangmen were often part of family businesses. Yes, executioner was apparently a legacy career path, like running a bakery. But still, two men with the same name dying in the same way by two executioners with the same name exactly a century apart? That's some seriously dark copy-paste. This family didn't just pass down the family business. They passed down the punch card. The twin brothers who couldn't escape destiny in Finland. 2002. Two elderly twin brothers died in separate accidents on the same road, just 2 hours apart. Both were hit by trucks while cycling, less than a mile apart. Neither knew about the other's death yet. Now, twins often freak people out with their uncanny coincidences, finishing each other's sentences, showing up to family dinners wearing the same shirt, that kind of thing. But this one sounds like fate had a very specific glitch in its simulation. Statistically, road accidents aren't rare, but for twin brothers to die on the same stretch of road, on the same day, hours apart, yeah, that's less coincidence and more like the universe putting copy and paste on repeat. Whoever programmed Destiny clearly forgot to turn off the duplicate file warning. The Poe time-traveling story. Edgar Allan Poe wasn't just good at depressing poetry. He apparently moonlighted as a time traveler. In 1838, he published The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, a novel where shipwrecked sailors kill and eat a cabin boy named, wait for it, Richard Parker. Flash forward 46 years. A real shipwreck happens, and the starving survivors kill and eat a cabin boy. His name, Richard Parker. Coincidence? Probably, but it's so oddly specific that people have been side-eyeing Poe's ghost ever since. Sure, Richard Parker was a fairly common name in 19th century Britain, but writing fiction that ends up being weirdly prophetic makes you wonder if Poe had a direct line to the Twilight Zone. Forget horror. Poe's real genre was spoilers for real life. The Bullet That Waited 20 Years. This one sounds like it was ripped straight out of a movie script. In 1883, Henry Zieglin from Texas broke off a relationship with his girlfriend. Heartbroken, she took her own life. Her brother, furious, tried to avenge her by shooting Zieglin. The bullet grazed Zieglin's face and lodged into a tree. Zieglin survived, thinking fate had spared him. Fast forward 20 years later, Zieglin was chopping down that same tree. To make it easier, he used dynamite. The explosion sent the old bullet flying straight into his head, killing him instantly. Now, let's be clear. Some historians debate whether this tale got Texasified into legend because it's just too perfect, but whether it's entirely true or just heavily embroidered, it's the kind of story that sticks because it feels mythic. The idea that a bullet literally waited decades to finish its job makes our brains light up with equal parts dread and fascination. Moral of the story: if a bullet misses you once, maybe don't dynamite its hiding place.